Incense burning, all space is filled with a fragrance. All breathers smell it from afar. Auspicious clouds gather everywhere. With utmost sincerity, all odors of you. We pay homage and offer clouds of incense to the Bodhisattvas and the Mahasattvas. We pay homage and offer clouds of incense to the Bodhisattvas and the Mahasattvas. We pay homage and offer clouds of incense to the Bodhisattvas and the Mahasattvas. So about, I guess, a week and a half ago, Venerable asked me to share with you all a little bit about my 30-day solitary retreat. That was in November and December. So that's what I've prepared to talk with you about today. I want to mention, I've talked to you about the 7-day retreat. And when I went on that 7-day retreat, I did get a lot out of it. And I knew at the very end of that retreat immediately that I was going to need to come back. I was impelled to come back for a longer 30-day retreat. And so I asked Master Zazi before I even left California for the 7-day retreat if I could come back for a 30-day retreat. It just felt really necessary. It felt like I was stepping into something that had potential to deepen even further. So that had been kind of considered and planned and talked to Venerable, and she gave her blessing. And so I arranged to do that. In the time between the two retreats, there wasn't a whole lot of time. It was summer to fall. You know, we Buddha Master says, and the Buddhists say that we have our periods of strengthening and our periods of instability. And there were periods of instability during that time, for sure. And soon before I left for the retreat, Venerable had mentioned that, I had been having a conversation with her, and she said that we all have a primary hindrance. And she knows what it is for all of her students. She wouldn't tell me what mine was. And so I, was really thinking about that. What is mine? I really considered it. What is it? And I ended up sharing it with her to see if it's what she was thinking. And the one that I came up with was a fear of failure. And she later helped me understand that it was not, from her perspective, a fear of failure, but actually pride. The way she described it was pride of accomplishment. And, that's where it's so wonderful to have a teacher who can help you see these things, because I feel like I'm relatively self-aware, but I was kind of missing that. I saw aspects of pride, but I saw it more as a fear of failure, which is actually kind of the same thing in a lot of ways as pride. It all stems from self-attachment. So before I went on the retreat, I had been in a little bit of a place of stuckness. And part of this is related to the things that I'm talking to you about now. It was a place of feeling like I'm not doing my practices well enough. I'm not cultivating well enough. I'm not sincere enough when I'm doing my practices. I'm not aligned in my 3 karmas. So I was actually setting myself up and in many ways avoiding the very remedies that the Buddha gives us. So I knew that this particular retreat was especially needed and timely, so that I could push past those difficulties and enter deeply into that which I have a lot of faith and belief in. So, so we all have pride, and that's another thing that I've been thinking about. We all have it, and it's actually very, it's something to be extra cautious about because it can block us completely. And like I said, it's sneaky. You don't even sometimes see it. So I did. Part of my aspiration, part of I think what we're all working to do is to see ourselves as we actually are, and that's where Sangha and teacher is really, really helpful. They become a mirror for us. So my aspirations, my foundational aspirations for the retreat were to surrender to the Buddha, Dharma, and the Sangha, to turn only to this in difficulty rather than my own ordinary mind or distraction. Because when I found that I was actually taking reliance in myself, I was taking refuge in myself. I was taking refuge in that which I'd always done, and not stepping fully as much as I wanted to into that which I've taken up. So my aspirations for retreat were to surrender to the triple gem and to cultivate compassion and acceptance of myself in whatever stage that is, and then spread, from that place you can better offer compassion and love and acceptance to others. And I knew that was something that needed to be strengthened. And also, with this place of pride or fear of failure, there's a doingness for me, maybe for many others. There's a doingness, there is a pressure, there's a sense of duty or effort, and that is completely devoid of joy. You can't have joy when there's those, not devoid of joy, but it is definitely suppresses joy. So I wanted to connect to joy and ease and presence and be a pal to myself. One day I was talking to Kadara, I had like an insight one morning. I was like, I can actually be a pal to myself and surrender the false self, because all this is really the false self. Buddha Master says, therefore, I tell you that a person must never have a mentality of pride. Otherwise, one will not be able to cut off self-attachment. Precisely because of this, I am one with the heart of humility, forever a servant of living beings. No matter how the person I am dealing with acts, I still should always serve them. Our practice is to bring happiness to their minds. Whether our level is high or low is not important. What is important is that we must not harm or hurt other people. He says, my own level is not high. That is why I am an average practitioner, one with a humble heart. Thus, I want to learn. I want to earnestly learn from all good people. So he gives us many examples of how to practice humility, even in his own speech and actions, what we want to emulate. So one of my great aspirations is to be a Dharma instrument, a vessel, a pure vessel where the Dharma can kind of come through. Venerable's a good model for that. In order to be a Dharma instrument, it's clear that you have to surrender pride. And the idea of even I, me, mine, and other. So what pride looks like. My thoughts, I am doing. Selfishness. A lot of this is looking and truly seeing what we don't necessarily haven't wanted to see. I saw a ton of selfishness, and that's not a bad thing. I'm glad to see it. I'm really glad to see it. I've had a long history of selfishness, and I am excited about eroding and eradicating that selfishness, considering self and not others. I have a history of wanting to do it myself. These guys can attest to that. A sense of perfectionism. Also, coupled with that, some self-doubt, self-judgment. I can't. I've done something wrong. Someone's going to be mad at me, equivocating. Over-reliance on what I know, that my way is the best way. Some of these, I can see it, but I do it anyway sometimes because it's so natural. Some of these things are so natural. I think we can all relate. So I'm wrong and you're right. Even this morning in the kitchen, we were having a little conversation about uh, euthanasia, taking our assistive suicide for ourselves. And I wasn't necessarily meaning to be in an I'm right, but I think my comments had that flavor. And I know that can immediately put people off. So it's a wonderful opportunity to see that and to know that, that it's there and that it might potentially reduce connection with someone else. When my brother was in town with his 4-year-old now, that came up too, but it was great because I saw it. But we went to my sister's house, and his 4-year-old was acting up, and they were really, they're older parents, and they're really permissive, and I get a little feeling of judgment. So he was acting up, and my brother was like, "It's okay. I'm sorry. You're sad." I don't know. I don't even remember exactly what happened, but I made a one-word response, like something like, "He can be something." I don't even remember. But my brother immediately was offended because he felt judged around his parenting. But in that moment where before I might have defended myself or defended the position, I said, "I'm sorry. I did do that." And it felt so good. It felt really good, and we could just move on beyond it. So just seeing that these things are possible and that they actually open instead of close. The I'm right is so contracted. When there's a contraction, we're only seeing that one view, this one view that I have in this moment based on, whatever it is, all the different thoughts and feelings and readings and whatever else that I've done that have created this one view. But think of the vastness of possibility. When you're clasped onto that one view, you have no access to the vastness, none, zero. Feeling that I need to do it all. I mentioned when I was in the retreat, there was a mother cat who had kittens. She had 6 little kittens. And I was worried about the kittens. They were actually kind of preoccupying during this part of the retreat. And because it was cold at night. And so after a couple weeks, I set up the beds. I put a heater in the little shed for them and everything. I was wanting to make it all nice and comfortable for her. And I went in there one day, and the kittens were in this dirty, cold, cramped corner by all this shed stuff. And I was like, "What are you doing?" And I moved all of her kittens back to the comfy bed. And I went in there later, and they were back in that corner. I didn't move them that time. I was like, "Okay, fine. You're just going to do you." But then I went in later, and she had carried each kitten up into the very top of the shed, like this loft, where I thought maybe they could fall. But I realized in that moment, here I am, this human being, thinking I know better than you. And Master Zazi told me that out of 3 litters of cats, there were 2 litters with 12 kittens. There were only 3 left. They'd all been picked off by coyotes and stuff. So she was protecting her kittens, and here I was thinking that I knew better. That was a great example of humility for me. And I appreciated it so much, her as my little teacher. I also reflect on how has my knowing, where has it gotten me? It's gotten me here, and that's not a bad place. But where has the Buddha's knowing gotten them? Why should I think I know better than anything that we're learning in particular? Zen Master Sung San says, "You must make my opinion, my condition, my situation disappear. Then your correct opinion, correct condition, and correct situation will appear." And I love this. He says, 1 minus 1 equals 0. Emptiness. Another kind of aspect of over-reliance is being quick to do things, reading, practicing. I'm quick because I get a quick intellectual understanding of something, so I just kind of keep going. But I've realized that is a real deficit when it comes to deep knowing and realization. So in order to deepen, you have to trust, one. You have to bring yourself to the present. You have to make the time. You have to deal with the feelings of discomfort sometimes. Discomfort with not knowing, discomfort with whatever the sensations are in the body. Slow down. So that quick to do things is I think an aspect of pride. And then not asking questions. You know, I actually mentioned this to Venerable. I'm like, I recognize I don't ask very many questions. I feel like I can find it myself. I'll figure out the answer myself. And again, I'm not seeking to be self-demeaning here, but I'm just, it's been a really appropriate and beneficial review of what pride might look like and what humility might look like and how we can use those things in our own cultivation. And I know it's kind of weird to be talking a lot about myself when I'm talking about pride. So that was a little bit strange about this talk because it's about this retreat, but it's also about me partly. And so it seems a little odd with talking about pride, but that's what it is. So not asking questions, figuring it out, looking it up for myself, outwardly seeking. I remembered another example of this when I was mountain biking before I came here. I went on a long trail with my friends one time. And so the next time I was like, oh, I remember that trail. I don't need a map. I don't need my phone. I've got a bottle of water. I'm good. So I went out on this trail and got lost, completely lost, ended up on a very, very overgrown, I think unused trail that was really not, I mean, there was no directions, there were no signs. I had just stopped taking an amino acid, so I think it was helping. So I had like an energy crash or something. My body was really crashing. I had run out of water and I didn't have a phone. And so I eventually had to find my way down the mountain, kind of bushwhacking with my bike. I was a little scared. You know, I was like, this isn't good. I'm completely devoid of energy. I can barely walk my bike. I have no water, no phone. So I did find my way down the mountain, found my way to a road, and was able to walk to someone's house where I had to humbly knock on the door and ask for help. And they drove me back to my bike. I was back to the parking lot where my car was, very, very far away from it. Very good example of thinking I know. I did not know. Another example, I think, of pride, and I would love to hear from you guys too, but just like an external focus, you know, kind of seizing phenomena, thinking, you know, this is what I think it is in this moment, and then from that place, kind of going with or creating from that place. For example, the example I put here, I don't know if that's quite right, but in preparing for this talk, I don't think it's quite right, but I was in looking through my journal, the things that stood out were the insights, not so much the struggle. That's what I was initially looking at sharing. But the struggle is very much part of the experience and what we learn from. So I was grateful to see that. Pride is also thinking about like time or things should be a certain way. It used to be, Venerable's been a great teacher for that because when we say we're going to have a talk for a certain period of time, or it's going to start at a certain period of time, it's going to end at a certain period of time. She's a great teacher for that. My history has been like punctuality. We're going to do what we say when we're going to do it. And so for a long time, that was actually a little bit of a trigger. You know, it would bring stuff up for me a lot. But that was me thinking, me grabbing onto the concept, first of all, of time, and that there's something that needs to happen at a certain time and that we have to do things in a certain way. None of that is necessarily true unless we decide it's true. Kalu Rinpoche says, the Buddha compared pride to a hard rock on which drops of water can make no impression. These drops represent the positive qualities you develop through practice. If your pride has solidified to this extent, then there is no way for positive qualities to penetrate. Much the same thing happens if we regard Dharma simply as an intellectual pastime. If we merely accumulate information without practicing or experiencing what we have learned, our faith and compassion will diminish. We then become very indifferent to the teachings and think, I've heard that before, I understand that already. If we persist in this callous attitude, we reach a state where we cannot be helped. We have cut ourselves off from all possibility of being rescued from our stupidity. The Buddha said that even the greatest evildoer can be saved, but a person who has become apathetic towards the Dharma cannot be helped, because such a mind has become petrified and closed to the teachings. I thought that was a great example of what we've been talking about here. And so when we're looking out right now, we can see examples of pride and humility everywhere, in politics, in the way we respond to national disasters, in the way we prepare or don't prepare for natural disasters, in the way we other people. I'm right, you're wrong. It's everywhere. It's so strong right now. And we can see where we are because of it. It's hard to watch. But fortunately, we have, these teachings that are helping us see another way. Another quick story, it's called Empty Your Cup. A Zen story. A scholar once visited a Zen master in order to learn about Zen Buddhism. The Zen master was happy to share his knowledge, but the scholar kept interrupting him with his own opinions. It became clear that the scholar was more interested in expressing himself than in listening to the Zen master. As a result, the Zen master stopped speaking and began preparing tea for the scholar. While pouring the tea into the scholar's cup, the Zen master continued to pour even when the cup was full, causing the tea to spill over the sides. The scholar was puzzled and asked the Zen master why he was doing this. The Zen master explained, just like this cup, your mind is already full of your own thoughts and ideas. In order to truly understand my teachings, you must first empty your mind of these preconceptions. So, as far as examples of pride, those were some that I came up with. And then we can go into the experience of the retreat and the remedies that I found during retreat. Any comments or questions about pride so far?
I want to hear the remedies.
I really appreciated the insight into not asking many questions. There are lots of reasons I might not ask questions, not take up time for other people, not risk embarrassment, my self-story of, and as well as not knowing how to even articulate what it might be. And it just depends on the where I am when that comes up. But I can see that's but how it can apply for me. Thank you.
One thing that I
like to learn, and I like to learn more and more and more. So when you said stop when you get that insight and stay with it and go deep, that's something I tend to, what's next?
Mm-hmm.
What's the next insight? And so I really appreciate that, because it's a reminder to, the more won't matter if I don't even go deep in this.
Mm-hmm.
Take my time to do it. So thank you for that.
Mm-hmm. Deep, not wide. Yeah, Jim.
Maybe reflecting on how the really pride can even manifest as humility.
Yeah.
Wow.
Wow. And I'm picking off examples in my mind where I've been so, decidedly humble in my presentation that it's all about preserving a self-image.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's a great insight.
That's why almost ignorance helps in a way. Like when I was at the Buddha garden, there was a lunch, and they're cooking. And I just go up and I sit at the main table. And then the Rinpoche sits, and then I started to notice I'm sitting at the table with the Rinpoches and the monastics. And all of my friends are not at the table and they're sitting down. I'm like, I'm an idiot. And it was so evident, like how dumb I was. Like, and that is an example of pride and ignorance, like just completely together. I just was completely, I was like, yeah, I'm gonna sit. I'm gonna sit.
You were humble.
I was humble, and it was like, but being a fool. So like not trying to be humble in any way allowed me to become humble in a little bit of a way. So it's so interesting. Yeah. And also even asking questions. You can ask a question being prideful. Like, ooh, this is a good question. I'm gonna ask it.
Yeah.
It's a good question. So it is tricky.
It really, really is.
It's so
And I'm
tricky.
gonna see if you agree with me.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Sneaky and insidious. And that's where, again, just being a reflection for each other is such a gift.
I think Rob is trying to speak. Hang on a second, I'm trying to bring him in. Rob?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, this is what I want. The feedback's bad. Basically, what I wanted to say is it's insidious, this the pride. And like the thing about pride is that it's a lot sneakier. Like I think we as people like will give help so easily, but it's very difficult for us to receive help. And I say that because I think we'll quickly point out our faults, but we're less inclined and more insulated from the part that actually wants to see when we're prideful. Like for me, I'm coming up against myself now in a way where I realize my whole life I've been pushing so hard, and some of it was through the lens of insecurity, but some of it also is the spiritual pride and like letting go of that. I'm really working on doing that. And then what I'm realizing is that there's actually an imprint in my mind that pushes my conduct, my action, my way of being forward. Like, because it's so used to being on that track. And to really let go of that, I have to step into a place where I'm not even sure who I am.
Mm.
And that's it. It's not the most comfortable thing. It's like even that is wearing the umbrella of fear. And you can't over intellectualize about that either. You have to cultivate and see when it comes up, and then you have to find like reading the Golden Light Sutra. Like honestly, a couple of years ago, I would have think you got to meditate, you got to prostrate, you got to, and now I'm seeing like what it is to really surrender to the stream of a sutra and let it begin to shake out uh, the pigment that is impure. And this is very counterintuitive to the way I've normally done things. It's letting down the pride of thinking I know how to get further, because if I did, I would have been. So I really appreciate your reflection and just how insidious that is, and how there comes a point where we have to temper that side too, which I feel like it's been so easy for people to stake claim, myself as well, in unworthiness, but it's like, what about staking a claim in overworthying, if that's a word, because Panavati always tells us, like, you got to look at one side of how you think and act, and then you balance it with the other side. And when you do, you begin to come to a place inside yourself that flows from the flavor of equanimity, And I'm realizing that pushing, that striving, that inclination of the mind is not that.
Thank you, Rob. That's a good segue into some ways of working with this and the ways that really, having all those kind of these understandings have developed, since the retreat in many ways. I didn't really recognize that pride and humility were even so much Venerable had mentioned it before I left, and then it wasn't until I was looking through my journal to see what the themes were to share with you today that I realized that that was a major theme, and that would be good to kind of encapsulate the experience of the retreat. And it was a really good retreat. I went a little bit worried that I would be caught in those old ways of being, that I wouldn't go as deep, that there wouldn't be the surrender that I knew was necessary, coupled with the discipline, which is also necessary on a 30-day solitary retreat. You gotta, you could just do nothing, but I didn't want to do that. I wanted to follow the retreat schedule, but not in that same way of doing this, but more in a surrender. So part of that was reliance on the holy beings instead of myself. Admitting that I don't know, that I want to know more, and that I need help to do that. And committing to always return to the Dharma in times of struggle or wavering or waffling or, whatever it might be, instead of my own tendencies or fears. Some of that is checking out, it's like dissociating or something. Like, in a way, that's a control. You're controlling your experience. Surrendering all of that, experiencing, like Rob was saying, in some ways, the absence of things which can be kind of uncomfortable. And then the two bodhicittas during this retreat, I practiced the Mahamudra of liberation every day. And that is a practice in the two bodhicittas, which is the relative bodhicitta, taking on the sufferings of others through the Tonglen type practice. And then ultimate bodhicitta, which is a meditation of non-abiding, where you're really seeing all the thoughts. Buddha Master talks about this. In fact, I think it was a favorite line of Brian's in expounding, but he talks about how we don't follow the thoughts. We just, we experience them, we see them, but we don't follow them. So it helps to create a little distance between I am those feelings, or I am these qualities, and just being impartial in that way. So those things were refuges for me. Listening to the teachings, really integrating, not thinking I know. There is, speaking of the Sutra on Golden Light, there's a line in it that says, your light rays completely fill the worlds in the 10 directions. You liberate beings in accordance with their circumstances. You completely dispel the propensities for kleshas and craving. You are a continuous, eternal lamp of the Dharma. It's a beautiful, beautiful line. I think for a while there was a part of me, and I don't know how you all experience this, but that was like expecting in that kind of thing that they are going to dispel my propensities and cravings. They're going to do it. But I really deeply understood that they're not going to do it through their powers, even though they could. And maybe they will offer blessings and support. I think they do. But they give us the means and methods to do it ourselves. We have to do it. We have to see, we have to change our thoughts, our speech, our actions. Sometimes after, sometimes during, sometimes before. I was really aware of the need to do it, to take full accountability for progress or lack thereof. And just understanding that the Buddha light, when we're doing these practices, we're experiencing the light of the Buddhas. That light is shining all the time. It's non-differentiating. It's available to all of us. But we have to actually open up to the light. We have to accept and open up to that light. That requires trust and faith. And I really believe now that I'm starting to learn that anything is possible beyond the limitations of the mind. The mind is what limits us, our ordinary mind, our beliefs, our insecurities, our fears. A beautiful aspect is that I recognize that there's no negative outcome that can come to relying on and taking refuge in the Buddhas. There's absolutely no negative outcome. We are bowing before, we are taking up the qualities, the teachings of these stainless qualities, these pure and stainless qualities. Why wouldn't you do that? I recognize that we all need to ask the holy beings for help and open up to receiving. When I did that on this retreat, there were moments where, one, I definitely felt the support of this Sangha. I felt the support of my teacher. I felt the support of the holy beings. There was a joy in me that is not every day, but it pervaded in my ordinary life. But in this retreat, there was a joy. I was singing, I was talking to the holy beings, I was delighting in the Dharma. And I knew I couldn't do that without help. So I was really aware of that and very grateful for it, but also aware that it required asking, the humility of asking. There were many times on this retreat where there was struggle. I did get into that doing place. I didn't feel super heart-centered. I was kind of forcing myself. I did follow the schedule every day and did a whole lot of practices, but it wasn't all, without struggle. But when I asked for help in those moments, I felt like it was available. I remember one time I was struggling and I started chanting the 6-syllable mantra, Kuan Yin. And I just felt a radiance coming from my chest, expanding outward through my body. I knew she was there with me. I knew she was helping. I also recognized that part of me had been conditional. I was expecting the holy beings to do something for me. And if they didn't, forget it. I did. I recognized that. And I recognized how that was wrong. And again, I have to take full accountability for my progress or lack thereof. And there was an attitude of helplessness that I had that was a hindering obstacle. So the remedy is to practice and create new habits. But you have to see these little things, as Venerable says, the foxes that spoil the vine. And at this particular point, it was a joy to see them. All of these practices that we're offered, that we have access to, that we've been transmitted, one, we're really lucky to have. Two is that they all help us develop humility. The prostrations, that's a physical act of humility. You're laying down at the feet of the holy ones, recognizing that they started in bodies just like us, that they overcame obstacles just like us, that they did it to save other living beings. They went through much suffering and they overcame. I bow to you. May I walk in those footsteps. Making offerings, again, just being present with the beauty of those holy beings and saying, I offer you all that stands in the way. All that's beautiful in the world that can be attractive and seductive, but also all the things, the mental things, the things that we hold on to that stop us. I give you my thoughts, my body. I give you my actions. I give you my wealth and good fortune in my past, present, and future lifetimes. They are yours. I give them to you. When we're thinking about, others, the Brahma Viharas, once again, thinking of others is the primary mode for developing humility. We are so lucky to be able to have that as part of our daily practice, practicing care and wishes, good wishes for others who are suffering. Contemplation of impermanence, karma, all these are exercises in developing humility. Another thing about offerings and prostrations that I found helpful and that I would recommend is that when I'm prostrating, I'm imagining the sea of Buddhas, but I'm also imagining I'm prostrating with the sea of ordinary beings in all realms. I'm prostrating with the ants and the birds. I'm prostrating with the spirits and the ghosts. I'm prostrating with the hell beings. We are all prostrating. one of the preliminary practices, this retreat is really beneficial because it has the preliminary practices. Another aspect of pride that I've recognized over time is, and I've mentioned this before, there's a desire to see what the next thing is. What's the next teaching? What's the next practice, etc. But I have recognized over time that the foundational practices of these contemplations and preliminary practices, the prostrations, the offerings, and Vajrasattva, repentance, these are not just preliminary, but they're primary. You know, they're not what you do, they might be what you do before your main practice, and they might be 100,000, you know, that will help you. But even if you reach the 100,000 and even, you know, they're so beneficial. They're not small. So the awareness and contrition of the Vajrasattva practice is a beautiful thing. To do many, many repetitions of Vajrasattva, you really start to reflect on the conduct throughout your whole life. You start to go through your whole life. But then even more than that, you can consider the previous lives and repent, sincerely repent, and have actual regret. Another remedy that I found is that, and part of pride is that even when I was doing practices, the times that I felt the most disconnected is when I was thinking of, I am doing this. I am chanting a mantra. I am turning into the yidam. But if I could just, if there could just be the action of the chanting, the action of the mantra, it transforms things. You know, it gets you out of your own way. There's just the mantra. You can really be it. And in the yidam practice, really handing it off. You know, Joe talks about having some success with that in his, where he forgets himself. I still was having trouble with that. So there was and these are all active areas of cultivation. None of these are perfected. So, but there's a sense that if we can just hand it off, like truly hand it off, and don't try to control the process, we benefit. I love the sutta about being like the earth, water, air. That's a really good way to consider humility. Allowing everything and resisting nothing. Because ultimately all are equally empty. So gratitude is another huge one. I have a whole list, guys, of things that can help with this. Gratitude is a big one. And, you know, we were talking in Dharma study the other day about some of us having had the opportunity to meet Buddha Master. And what was clear to me when I was in retreat was that I was only there because Venerable, she brought us to California to meet Buddha Master when she was supposed to be going on her own, but she decided to bring all of us. So we got that opportunity to meet him. Going out to California, we were able to get some of these teachings, you know, the practices, the Dharma practices from Master Zazi, who I'm also incredibly indebted to and grateful for. And these marvelous teachings that we are now studying. So these are all due to the, you know, the grace of our teacher, really. And the blessings and merit of others, you know, both inside and outside of our body are all kinds of beings that are necessary for our survival. All those little microscopic beings in my body and our bodies deserve our gratitude because we wouldn't be here otherwise. Our egos like to think that we do it all alone, but there's no such thing. The biggest theme that I found in my journal over and over again is the secret is to give it all away. All away. Let go of what I know. When fast, you know, let go of our views. Let go of now we can still have views, but this attachment to anything, we're seeing this play out in conflicts in the world. Imagine if you could let go of your attachment to views, there's nothing to protect. There's nothing to hold on to. You are actually free, and you free others. We can actually give it all away. In fact, it's necessary to give it all away if we really want to liberate ourselves. It's a really exciting and joyful thought, including thoughts of I'm right or I know. I recognize that what you deny persists and grows. So seeing these things, when you deny it, there's this potential for shame and secrecy, and things even grow and become more powerful. So if we can see and acknowledge and even share, say it out loud, then there's nothing, once again, to protect. We can give that away. I recognize that the wanting, because there was a lot of wanting in this retreat. I want one-pointedness. I want dhyana. I want to know. But the wanting also needed to be renounced. It creates a duality, me and this. I'm not going to become something. All of it needs to go. In order to know reality, to know truth, all of our fabrications have to go. We're not deficient. There's no wanter. There's really actually nothing to want. So in order to enter that non-abiding state, we have to trust and let go, and reliance is needed. When we're in meditation, I don't know about you guys, but thoughts, feelings, cravings arise. That's another aspect where we can be relying on ourselves and attend to those feelings and get up, go eat, or whatever it is. But if we rely on the teachings and let go of those attachment to those thoughts and feelings, then we're really training our mind. If you get up when you're agitated, you're just reinforcing the agitation. If you can stay with it and just look at it and be with it, then you can start to see it more clearly. Stay and observe in discomfort. When we're not feeling it, we can actually also sit there and arouse the proper motivation instead of saying, I'm not feeling it. I don't think this is the right time. If you take the time and you have the patience and go to the teachings, like there were certain readings that I would come up to when I would encounter resistance. If I went to those readings and I really took the time and the intention to arouse the proper motivation, it would come up. And then I could actually enter into it. But it took will and motivation. I noted that a few concentrated and sincere prayers or mantras are way better than 30 distracted or dissociated ones. So in taking full accountability for our actions and progress, we as I talked about in the last time I spoke to you guys, we're actually transforming cause and effect. So the difficulties will diminish over time. It can be it's a gradual process. We're shaving away. So we're transforming cause and effect with one act at a time, creating new habits of goodness, steadily freeing ourselves, and in so doing, save other living beings. Another aspect is just that idea of judging or differentiating other people. I looked at Master Zizi's. I was in a little cabin across from her, from the main temple. And one night I saw her light on all night. And it just occurred to me, that story of I think this, I can't remember all the details, but a monk was kind of made fun of. He would do his own thing. He wasn't, everybody assumed he was just sleeping all day. But then one day they put him on the podium or whatever, and they told him to teach. And he had this amazing teaching and flew up in the air and, you know, humbled all of them with their ignorance about and judgment about him. I was thinking, who knows? She could be like, she could be a Buddha in there. She could be a Bodhisattva in there. We just can't know. We can't judge or differentiate anyone. And again, this is something that I know I have a lot of work to do, but I'm really committed to it because I recognize now that we need each other for our cultivation, you know. That's all I'll say about that one. And then again, one of the biggest things that was beneficial is just, you know, when there's pride or then there's also often a constriction, and not just in the mind, but in the body. So being really regular about trying to relax the body, relax the mind, and arouse joy. That's a really good practice. When it comes to judging or differentiate, I also wanted to tell a quick story. When I was in the middle of the retreat, I went into the kitchen and saw a note from Master, and there was a bag, a note that she was leaving to go to a Dharma assembly and she would be back the next day. And there was a bag with cake in it, and it was, she had written in the note, "Enjoy this cake, the disciples brought it, help me eat it." Well, unfortunately, there were about 20,000, give or take, ants all over it. All trailing through in a little line up the chair, swarming the table, all over in the bag. It was alarming. And so in that moment, I said, okay, I'm going to stop everything and clean. But so in that space of alarm and haste, in cleaning up the ants, I killed some. I didn't intentionally kill them, but I know that I did. I was wiping the surfaces. I was vacuuming and dumping it outside. I know that some were killed. I was stepping on some inadvertently. And this was such a great opportunity because later on, I really repented. I reflected and repented and said, if I am really going to think about and recognize all beings as my mother, is that the way I'd treat my mom? How can I really truly see these living beings as my mother? And so it offered a really great opportunity for reflection. That I know it's a hard one. It's been a hard one for me, you know, to really, really understand that truth. The Buddha says it's actually true. All beings have been our mother. So in considering that, you know, I thought about how, you know, we've all been cycling through samsara since beginningless time. We've all taken innumerable forms. Probably, certainly we've been ants. Because I have this form in this moment, and you have that form in that moment, how does that make me better than you? Our consciousness is not different in size. Maybe we have different brains in this body, but these are impermanent and temporary forms. Our consciousness has no difference. So we continue to attain different forms based on our karma created out of ignorance. So it created a little bit more space for compassion and true understanding, which I was so grateful for. Another thing that Buddha Master teaches is that if it weren't for every single living being, if you accept the truth that all living beings have been our mothers or fathers or close family members, all living beings, then that means that without every other single living being, I wouldn't be here right now, because they have all parented you, we've all parented each other. So if it weren't for every other living being, then the circumstances would be different. We wouldn't be in this particular moment, in this particular body with these teachings right now. So we owe all living beings everything. You know, Kadara has a song where she says, be curious. I love it because that's another remedy, is curiosity and continuous learning. You know, Reba and Kadara and I are in a yoga class at the YMCA, and two people in that yoga class have just really stood out to me with their openness and curiosity, and they're a great example to me of being curious and continuous learning. I think they might actually come to Dharma on Sunday. But just their brightness and curiosity and questions and energy are so beautiful. It's inspiring. You know, all these people are our teachers. So what else? What helps? Antidote for pride, patience, giving things time, practice, practice, practice. Resilience in the face of difficulty and failure. Surrender, doing what we don't want to do and taking up doing what we don't want to do and don't do what you want to do. That's a good one. That's a good daily practice. That's hard. No expectations. Not taking ourselves too seriously, non-attachment to the outcome. Having a focused attention and intention. When discouraged, rousing ourselves and taking that time to arouse the aspiration. As we talked about, cultivating joy. Understanding that nothing conditioned is satisfactory. There were good days in meditation. I would read something that was inspiring. I would feel good, but then that would wear off. So understanding that even those things are not satisfactory. We can buoy ourselves, but we have to really let it all go. Admitting our mistakes and repenting. And, you know, I love our encouragement to be servants, that no one's better than us. We can serve all other living beings. Listening to each other. We can always learn from everyone. I'm recognizing this more and more. Don't argue or press a point. This is a good one for me. No assumption of authority or no telling others what to do or believe. Letting go of the hindrance of the known. Buddha Master talks about this hindrance of the known. That was really, really clear during the course of that retreat. That is a big one. The hindrance of the known. He says it's absolutely imperative that we let go of it, saying, I know.
I don't understand exactly what that means.
That's attachment to views, saying, I know. Or even the book says, I've been bad for that too. The book says this, you know, like, even in preparing for this talk, you know, I'm relying on the hindrance of the known. I aspire to, I think we all do, to let that go, to let the true prajna come through us. But until that time, I'm still relying on the hindrance of the known. But that's something that we're asked to let go of over and over, more and more. Asking questions, asking for help, learning from people, trusting others' capabilities. Teachers are everywhere. Our little Bodhi cat is a great teacher. We talk about that all the time. You know, he shows us equanimity. He shows us adaptability. He shows us presence. Bill has been another great teacher for me. Letting others go first. Don't interrupt. Working on that. And slowing down. So that was the list I came up with for coming up against pride and developing humility. There's this excerpt from the Samyutta Nikaya that says, if one regards himself superior or equal or inferior by reason of the body that is impermanent, painful, and subject to change, what else is it than not seeing reality? Or if one regards himself superior or equal or inferior by reason of feelings, perceptions, volitions, or consciousness, what else is it than not seeing reality? If one does not regard himself superior or equal or inferior by reason of the body, the feelings, perceptions, volitions, or consciousness, what else is it than seeing reality? There's also some ways that we can work with this. There was one that I found in a book by Kalu Rinpoche, who I've been reading a lot lately, but he has a practice for transforming pride. And I'll just share it with you briefly. And then I would like, if we have time, to do just a little contemplation. And also offer the chance for you all to share anything else that you have. But Kalu says for this little practice, I am better than others. I'm very intelligent. I am important. These thoughts, characterized by a strong attachment to me, constitute pride. When it occurs, one remains neutral without rejecting or following it. One simply remains in the mind, resting on this feeling without distraction. From now on, this pride, comparable to a mountain, is naturally flattened. Me loses its overvaluation. And then you enter meditation. And he says, to the extent that we learn to meditate this way, the numerous opportunities for pride that arise in our mind are very beneficial because they become the support for the development of the fifth paramita, that of concentration. At the same time, when pride, which is born from the assimilation to a me, is erased by looking at its essence, pride gives way to the perception of the absence of me. So I do also just want to say that, that I'm incredibly grateful for that time in retreat. I continue to learn a lot, and it's due to the generosity and kindness of all of you and our teachers. And it's very humbling. So thank you for supporting me and offering well wishes and support from afar. I felt it and definitely benefited from it. Any comments? Yeah.
So I've been choosing a word for the week. And this week is renunciation. And your entire talk today was really about that. I think for a while, renunciation was viewed as giving up, giving up my being, my car, my stuff. But truly renunciation is so much more than that, so much beyond that. And the more I study it, the 37 practices, it's right there. Really speaks to what you just spoke of.
Bhusita, I just want to say that this was the most wonderful session. I learned so much. And I also want to say that it was delivered with perfect humility.
Oh. Thank you, Reba.
Kind of makes you feel proud.
That's so funny because in the Mantra of Liberation, Buddha Master says, don't pay any attention when someone says that you're good or says that you're bad. Both can be attached to.
Maybe so.
Maybe so, yes.
It's funny though, Venerable gave Dharma talk and she cautioned us about giving compliments because it could engender an obstacle in other people.
Yeah.
So not we think, oh, give compliment, that's good, but it actually could create more of a problem for someone. Yeah. So it's just
No.
And you almost get to a point where it's like, I don't know what to do. I just gotta lay on the ground, right?
I think it's, I don't know, my perception is it's all right to, express gratitude for the tools that we're given.
Mhm.
And also it's encouragement, it's love. So that is true. It can perhaps engender pride or something, but that's kind of like your problem. I mean, for me, if I am saying it with, as I said, love and gratitude and encouragement, then I'm gonna do it.
Yeah, I mean, that also just helps us feel gratitude for our teachers who have the discernment to know how exactly we are best taught. You know, Venerable teaches all of us very differently, and I so appreciate that. She knows our tendencies and helps us within, you know, the channel that will best reach us. But that requires wisdom.
Just making offerings, when we do our various offerings in our practices, you could look at it either way, that I'm saying I'm making a compliment or I'm offering all that I am to you because of what it's,
Mhm.
it has more than one connotation when we say thank you.
Yeah, that's true. Depends on intention and motivation.
Yeah, I've been thinking about compliments because I share them so freely. And so really trying to get in touch with one intention. Am I doing this because maybe you're relaxed a little bit, you're more receptive to constructive feedback, which, you know, we have to do sometimes in our families and our partnerships. So very clear on my intention, and also trying to balance the compliment if it's sincere and a real honoring of another's gifts. But also balancing that with constructive feedback. You know, when you do this, I feel X, I feel Y, and just kind of being clear all around. So really striving for good intention and balance, you know, with that.
Yeah, always thinking about how our actions affect or can affect someone else. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's such a helpful step to think ahead and just consider.
Yeah.
For me,
Can I share just this one more thing, and it's not even mine, it was Rob's. That thing you were saying about doing, you know, doing this. God knows that, you know, that's how I do everything. But Rob said, consider whether your work ethic is driven by fear or by love.
Mhm.
And that has really meant so much to me. That that's like motivation and intention, but why are you doing this?
Yeah, that's a very good point.
may I? Can you hear me?
Yep, go ahead, Rob.
What I want to say is we have to, so much of this, I know that we've heard this a million times, but honestly, we have to hear it a kabillion times. So much of this is about knowing our own mind and knowing and accepting, where I really appreciated this truth about your talk, Bhusita, is like knowing and accepting the developmental stage that we're at. Sometimes half of the growth happens from just settling into and relaxing with that. Like, so this issue of complimenting for me now, honestly, I tell my son, I tell him I love him. I tell him that all you guys love him. I tell him that he's smart. I tell him that he's funny. I tell him all these things, you know, so that he is inclined to not doubting. And there might be a point where he has to overcome that. But for right now, where I'm at and where he's at, it's really helping me. You know, it's like the mirror of his goodness is polishing out the places where I still hide inside myself and feel like I'm not validated in light, you know? So I think some of it's just really knowing where we are I also wanted to say sometimes the smallest, I resonate with what you said about the power of the Sangha. You know, yesterday I came to the prayer. You know, I'm always running to try to get something done because balancing a job and Teo and the Dharma, it's not easy sometimes, you know. So I came into the prayer like 3 or 4 minutes late, and I had opened the book to the old Vajrasattva, you know, and I was just like, okay, well, I don't want to ruffle through the pages because I don't want to upset everybody, you know. And honestly, Soma spontaneously just looked over and just with so much love and care in her heart, she guided me to the right place. And I don't know why, it just, I felt so seen. I felt so touched by that. And I felt so lucky to uh, be in a space where the hearts of those that are working on their own hearts could spontaneously arise and help me along, you know.
Thanks, Rob.
Well, that was a beautiful example, because he didn't look at I am, he looked at you are. He looked at someone. And in that moment, he had a release.
Nice.
Yeah.
I find trying to recognize sympathetic joy during the day and at the end of the day is a good way for me to tamp down my pride. Because recognize what wonderful things other people are doing, getting joy out of what they are doing. I have to make often. I have to make time to do it. And it's not to the point where with our kids it all happens automatically. With other things, I need to make way for that to just arise more organically and automatically.
Thank you. That's a wonderful example.
It is.
So I thought we might end with just about 5 minutes or so of just sitting quietly with our eyes closed and reflecting on our interdependence with all living beings. You just close your eyes, pay attention to your breath, notice the sensations in your body, the weight of your body in the chair. We reflect on these bodies. These bodies are only here because of every meal that we have ever had in our entire lives. Including our sustenance this morning. We reflect on how those meals came to us. Someone had to plant the seed for the fruit or the vegetable. The sun and the rain had to nourish that seed. The bees had to fertilize. All the microorganisms in the earth had to support that plant. Someone had to nurture and support that plant in its growth. Someone had to harvest that plant. Perhaps it had a machine to help it. Someone had to, many, many, many beings had to come together to create that machine that put together the harvesting, that collected the food, that transported the food. Someone had to drive that truck. Families had to support that person. That person also had to eat. Beings survived and died in the creation of all of the things that helped us get that meal, the asphalt. The stores in which the food is kept. We reflect on, as Buddha Master says, that even standing up from a chair affects the air that affects every other living being. We all serve as conditions affecting each other. Every single thing we do affects others. When we can offer gratitude for that which allows us to live and be here now. We actually, with our choices from that place of gratitude, create something good that affects others in a positive way. We can create beauty and sustain each other through just recognizing our interdependence. There is no such thing as a single self that takes care of itself. We pay homage to His Holiness Dorji Chang Buddha III, to Shakyamuni Buddha, and to all the Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, Dharma protectors, Shravakas, Prateka Buddhas, and Arhats in the 10 directions. We pay homage and offer gratitude to our teacher, Venerable Panawati, who gives herself away to save other living beings. We offer gratitude to Master Zazi Zuma Rinpoche. We offer gratitude to all the living beings in the Dharma sphere, all of our parents who have given everything so that we can be here in this very moment. May the merit of this time together benefit all beings who are suffering in all realms of existence. May all beings be happy, peaceful, and free from suffering. May all beings turn the light inward and awaken to their true and perfect nature.